All right, welcome to Deep South ELR. I'm Sean Rhodes. I am responding to some comments we've had where some of our shooters and people interested in the sport of extreme long range rifle shooting have asked what is the bare basics they need to get started in ELR. So we want to do a video that hopefully gives you some insight into what you may need. I'm going to be using some equipment that I personally have used, and some of this you may not need necessarily, but I'll point out what you don't need. But we're going to guide you through the bare necessities for ELR rifle shooting. All right, so for, of course, the sport of extreme long-range rifle shooting, the first thing you're going to need is a rifle. Now, I'm convinced you could show up to some ELR matches without even a rifle, and someone would have one that they would let you shoot because the people are so good in ELR. But let's just assume that you're not going to rely completely on the kindness of strangers and talk about a rifle. So this is the rifle. This is a good rifle for getting started in ELR. It's a good rifle for continuing to compete in ELR, honestly. This is a Ruger Precision rifle. It's a Gen 1 Magnum. I think they're on Gen 3 now, but this is a Gen 1 Magnum is the bare bones of it. Of course, it was chambered originally in 300 PRC. That's a great cartridge for light gun ELR. Light gun is up to 338 caliber bullets and up to 26 pounds of weight, which the Ruger Precision rifle falls under. You can get it in 338 Lapua, 300 PRC. I would say the bare minimum cartridge for ELR is 6.5 PRC. It's a great one. Just at distance, it starts to run out, or if the wind's bad, you're really playing with your margin of error. This one currently is chambered in 7 PRC, which is a really efficient and competitive cartridge for light gun ELR. I've had really good results with this rifle, but this is my Ruger Precision. So the first thing you're gonna need is a good rifle. It's gotta be capable of way better, or at least 1 MOA accuracy. That's not a 3-shot group or a 5-shot group. Of course, a lot of that's going to be dependent on the shooter and the ammo you use. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the ammo. So we've talked about the rifle. Let's talk about the next most important thing, your ammunition. So the next thing you're going to need is good quality ammunition. So you're going to need at least 1 MOA or better ammunition out of your 1 MOA or better rifle. The reason for that is most ELR matches are going to be shooting 2 MOA plates roughly for whatever distance it is, so you want to have as big a margin of error as possible. What I have up there currently is Hornady match ammo for the 7 PRC. It's running 180 grain ELD match bullets. Through this rifle currently as it's set up as a 30-inch barrel, we're getting about 2,990 feet per second or so out of this load. It's been a very competitive load. We've had confirmed hits with factory ammo out to just over 2,300 yards. So we know it's capable of it, but you're gonna need that. If you're a beginner, just get boxes of good ammo. I recommend getting at least 5 boxes of the same lot, so you have 100 pieces of brass when you're done. And then that gets you started on your reloading journey. If you're already reloading, then of course you'll wanna reload custom tailored ammunition that really helps with your rifle. Almost all ELR shooters, once they've been in it for a while, are doing hand-loaded ammunition just because they can eke out that last little bit of accuracy and custom tailor that ammunition for their setup. But as a bare minimum, you want good factory quality match ammunition that will run consistently through your rifle without pressure, and it will give you really good accuracy at distance. Part of that is going to be a really good extreme spread and a good standard deviation. All right, we've discussed rifle and ammo. Now let's add the next most important thing, which you can already see has been put on the rifle, and that is a bipod. What you're going to want is a steady, firm, wide bipod. The model I'm currently running is an AccuTac. They are very heavily built. They are incredibly sturdy. I never worry about them supporting the weight of the rifle. You can also see that I've put slider feet on it, which is an option offered by AccuTac. That's not absolutely necessary at the beginning. The rubber feet that come on them is fine, but eventually you'll probably want to swap to something that'll give you some straight back and forth on the slide. The AccuTacs are very popular on the firing lines. Of course, you also have Phoenix bipods, which are they're not a foldable entry, but they are very wide and very sturdy. You also want a bipod that will give you adjustable up and down. Pan is nice. Cant is necessary. You got to be able to tilt it but you definitely want to be able to adjust your elevation. The AccuTacs have a lot of elevation built into them that lock out quickly, and then when you push the buttons at the front of the legs there, they retract really quickly. But the AccuTacs have been, it's what I run, they've been a really good bipod. This is one of the areas where you can start off with a Harris. You can start off with any bipod that's worked well for you, so long as it is sturdy and you're comfortable with it. You don't have to go out and buy a super expensive bipod right off the bat. But you will definitely want something that is sturdy and supports the weight of the rifle, so that you can manipulate the rifle while on the clock in a stage in a consistent manner. Again, this is what I use is currently the AccuTac, but there are a ton of great options out there. All right, so let's talk about, this is something that actually probably should have been in front of the bipod, but as you can see, I've added scope. Now, this scope is already mounted on the rifle. If I'd had my druthers for this video, I would have put it on to add it to the rifle so you could see it. One thing I meant to mention on the rifle is you want at least a 20 MOA rail to give you a little bit of elevation, because one of the essential things you need with your scope is elevation. We're shooting extreme long ranges. This scope is a Trijicon. It's AccuPoint. I've had nothing but great luck with it. I like the glass in it. It's a 6x36x56. Now, one key thing you will probably want on an ELR scope is that it is first focal plane. What first focal plane means is that the reticle stays at the same size regardless of the magnification. Now, that's fairly poorly worded, but let me explain. When I'm at 5 magnification on this scope, the reticle is very small, but it is a Christmas tree style reticle, which means it has subtensions in it. This is a MOA scope. Of course, a lot of shooters, probably the majority now, use mil reticles, but this is a MOA. And as I zoom in, the reticle grows in size. Well, wait a minute, you just said the reticle stays the same size. What I mean are the measurements on the reticle, the subtensions of the reticle, stay the same value regardless of the magnification. On a second focal plane scope, where you're at in the magnification range can change the value of the measurements in the reticle. So you want to go with a first focal plane because depending on what magnification is useful that day, you will want to know that your subtensions are staying the same, and that's just less math you have to think about on the firing line on the clock. You'll want a Christmas tree reticle because it gives you windage very quickly if you need it in switching wind conditions. Some people say Christmas tree reticles are very busy, but you learn to look through that very quickly, so that's not a problem. With respect to the scope, now this scope is currently in an adjustable inclination base. What that means is it's a base that will angle and give the scope more mechanical elevation if you need it. You do not need that to begin with. I have it on this one because I've had it for a while. It's an AeroTac adjustable inclination base. I love them. It goes from 0 to 70 MOA, and you can add that in. It is going to tilt the scope, so you have to factor that in on your cheek piece, but I've had good luck with them. But you do not need that to begin with. What you do want is at least a 20 MOA rail on your rifle, which most long-range rifles today are going to come with. And you're going to want a scope that has, I would say, at least 50 MOA of travel. For you mil shooters, that's going to be about 15 mils of elevation. You're going to want that because depending on what cartridge and bullet you're shooting, you're going to want to be able to go way out, and that'll help you do that, especially in a light gun. So at least 50. If you have a reticle, like a Christmas tree style reticle that has built-in elevation, you can at least hold over at the further distances that you may not be able to dial. This scope, you don't necessarily need one with illumination. Most ELR matches are going to be held in good light. This is not low light shooting competition, so you're not really going to need illuminated reticles, but most of these scopes are going to come with that when you're talking about the price points we're talking about on these scopes. You're going to want windage. You're going to want at least 10 MOA of windage both ways, preferably more, and that would be roughly 3 mils, both left or right, so you can dial it if the wind is staying consistent or if you just like to dial your wind. Most of the time you're going to be shooting very efficient bullets, so you'll be able to get very long distances, and you got to have the elevation to do that because it's much easier to dial than to try to hold over. So you want to try to have as much elevation as you can. So if I were looking at a scope in the ELR world, I would look at one that has at least 100 MOA of travel, because that's going to give you 50 up and 50 down. All right, so when you see 100 MOA, don't make a common mistake of thinking, okay, this will dial 100 up. Well, that's in the center of a tube. You're going to have 50 up and 50 down. That 20 MOA rail's hopefully going to give you about 70 up from the get-go, but you'll have to leave some space for zeroing your rifle. One of the most important things you can do is buy a good scope. Scopes can move between rifles. If I were focusing on my budget at the beginning of an ELR build, my glass would probably be at least the cost of my rifle. The glass you can use for a long, long time, and you want something that's very mechanically consistent so that it dials good elevation and adjustment. You want something that's going to return to zero when you dial back down. Currently, as this is set up, I dialed it before we got started, and I have approximately 78 MOA up as it's currently sitting with zero adjustment on the adjustable inclination base. That's with I think a 30 MOA rail is what comes on this rifle. And so it's given me about 78 up where it's zeroed. I have it zeroed at 100 yards, which I also recommend. Don't get fancy with your zeros. It just makes the math harder. All right, but you will want to spend money and time evaluating your scopes and learning how your scope works, learning which way to dial your windage while you're under pressure so you make sure you don't dial the wrong way. You want something that lets you know that when you get back to your rotation, back to your zero, a zero stop is nice, but you'll want at least something that marks the turret so when you get back to your zero, you know you're there. There's no worse feeling than being on the clock and realizing you're one rotation above or below where you thought you were supposed to be. It's just a waste of time and money. But always, always, always spend more money on your scope if it comes down to it, because that's a better investment over time. All right, as you can tell, I've added number 5, a rear rest of some sort. You have got to have stability in the rear. This is not going to be a situation where you can support it with your hand and have any kind of consistency at extreme long ranges. It looks good, it sounds good, it makes you seem like a macho man. It's not going to work. So what I have in the back right now is just a rear bag. This is an Armageddon Gear Game Changer. If you're coming from a PRS or NRL world, you're probably familiar with this bag. It's one I've had for years and it's never let me down. It is a good, soft, adjustable bag. I've got a medium feel in it, I would say right now. So it really helps. I've shot ELR matches with it. And you want something that while you're looking through the scope and you're set up, you have ability to squeeze it or something that'll let it adjust your elevation to fine tune it on target. You also want a bag that will let you track straight back and forth. You want it to be able to drive it under recoil. One of the hardest things to find, and one thing you'll hear a lot of ELR shooters talk about, is how many different style of rear rest they went through before they found what they liked. Now, there are a ton of options out there. There's some really great options put out by some really good ELR shooters. There are inflatable rear rest bags. There are adjustable bags. One thing ELR doesn't do currently is use a machine rest, sort of like a bench rest style rest or something in the rear. We do want to keep it more of where the shooter is driving the rifle. But whatever you need to use to get that kind of consistent elevation and to be able to hold it consistently on target while you're in a string of fire, that's what you'll have to sort out. A rear rest is a very personal thing, a rear bag. I've tried probably at least 7 or 8 different mechanisms and methods. All of them had their merits. Some of them I've liked better than others. But this, if you're coming from the PRS world or NRL world, or you have another rear bag that you enjoy, there's no reason to go out and buy something super expensive. Use what you're used to, use what you're comfortable with, and that way you'll know and be familiar with the equipment and you're not worried about fighting it on the clock. So make sure you have some kind of rear rest as a bare basics for ELR. All right, this next thing I've added is definitely an essential, but it's not something you necessarily think about. You will want good and comfortable ear protection. I know a lot of shooters, especially once they get to the world of ELR, have been shooting for years in other disciplines, whether that's hunting, wing shooting, whatever. And the number one thing we're always going to hear, well, my ears are already bad, it's okay. It is not okay. These rifles, especially heavy class rifles, which are up to 50 BMG, they are minor artillery going off. And no matter how bad your hearing already is, you will hurt if you don't have ear protection. A lot of heavy gun shooters double up on their ear protection. They have ear muffs and they have earplugs in at the same time. So it's not a macho thing. This is something you have to have, and you want it to be comfortable. These are amplified so I can hear people, but they cut out. I really enjoyed them. They are Sorden Supreme Pro X's. They were recommended to me by a good ELR shooter years ago. I've had these for probably 5 years now, and they're one of the best purchases I've ever made. They're pricey, and so you don't have to get something this expensive right off the bat. But if you're going to be wearing them all day at an ELR shoot, you can quickly learn why comfortable ear pads are worth it. But there are plenty of good brands out there, Walker, Sorden. They're good earplugs. There are custom molded in-ear plugs. There are all kinds of options for ear protection. But whatever you do, you've got to make sure you have ear protection. That's one of the essentials. You can't show up at a firing line without that. Any match director out there is not going to let you shoot or be on the firing line for long without ear protection. You're not going to want to be. There are plenty of matches where I've gone back to my staging area. It's far enough away that I've taken my ear protection off. Something happens up at the firing line and I go up to help, and I quickly realize I do not have my ears on because my ears are ringing when somebody shoots and I forgot about it. So you will definitely want ear protection. So that's the main things you need for ELR. Let's talk about a few other miscellaneous things you will need as bare essentials. Probably the biggest thing left that I don't have an example to put up there is some kind of ballistic calculator. You're going to need something that you can put in your environmental conditions, your temperature, your humidity, your altitude, your azimuth, your direction of fire, whatever other factors you think you want to put in, your wind, all your environmental factors, and get some kind of data about what your elevation or what your drop and windage may be. That can be as simple as a free program on your phone, all the way to the most expensive Kestrels with applied ballistic software that is going to give you very accurate data way out to distance. You've got to have that. Otherwise, it's just a guessing game. There's no way really in today's modern world to do ELR without that. And there's no excuse not to have it because it's available everywhere. Like I said, there are a ton of free apps you can use. There are pay apps. You're going to have at least that baseline of data. The other thing I want to say about that is you need really good data. You're going to need to take a lot of trips to the firing line. You're going to need a really good zero. Whether you do the recommended, seems to be the recommended zero now of at least 10 shots to get a good zero, and maybe more if you still want to do a 3-shot group. But you're going to need something to get you a good zero at a known yardage, and that's going to be the basis for all of your data going forward. You're going to make sure you have to put good data in. If you don't put good data in, you're not going to get good data out. So make sure you have good data. Make sure you have a good way of processing that data. As far as other miscellaneous things, there are a few little things that are nice things to have, but you don't necessarily have to have them to get started. Let me talk about what you don't have to get started in ELR. You don't have to have a multi-$1,000 spotting scope. You don't even have to have a spotting scope. If you show up at an ELR event and you don't have a spotting scope, you don't even have to have a spotter. You will have somebody there that will gladly volunteer to spot for you, and there will be people that have some spotting scopes that are the top-notch equipment that you can get in the ELR and optics community that are more than willing to spot for you with theirs. So don't worry about dropping a lot of money on a spotting scope. It's good to have a spotter that you work with often, but you don't have to have that to shoot ELR. A lot of times, people don't have another ELR shooter near them. Don't worry about it. We will have people to spot for you if you show up at a Deep South ELR match for sure. Another thing you don't have to have that a lot of people want, you don't have to have a rangefinder. A lot of people want to have a super nice rangefinder. The Vectronics Terrapins, the SIG Kilo 10Ks, everything. There's everything out there that you can get that will give you incredible distances way out there. You don't have to have it. Your distances at an ELR match are going to be provided to you by the match director. So don't waste a lot of money on a rangefinder right now. Is it nice to have when you're shooting on your own? Absolutely. But you do not need it to get started in ELR. Put that money in a good scope or a good rifle system or in ammo or reloading equipment that will let you better perfect your technique, and don't worry about it. You don't need a weather meter necessarily. I talked about that ballistic calculator. You can pull a weather app off your phone that'll give you close enough. So don't worry about buying the nicest Kestrel Elite right now. I've never had a firing line where somebody wouldn't give me environmental data. So don't worry about spending a lot of money on that right now. Come to a match and see what people are using, then spend that money if you want to, when you have it. You don't need a chronograph to start off. Is it nice? Yes. But you don't have to have one. Again, this is bare essentials, bare necessities. So if you don't have a chronograph to get started, that's fine. People will have chronographs that you can borrow. Chronographs have become Such an easy thing to set up and use through the Garmin's, Lab Radars, Athlons. There are so many good options now that you don't have to worry about that. So if you don't have a chronograph, don't worry about it. You're going to have at least a rough idea based on your drop and your elevation data that you can figure out roughly what your rifle is doing. But I know you'll want to get a chronograph pretty quickly, but you don't have to have it to get started. All right, the last thing you will need for ELR is a community of shooters that will support you and that will help you and that will make the ELR world the funnest possible world you can be in. And so you can tell what I've added now is a Deep South ELR hat. That hat is nice. That hat came from a friend of mine that wanted to make sure we had something for Deep South ELR, and he's an ELR shooter. And thank you, Donovan, for the hats. That's how this community is. He had these hats made so we would have them, and he donated them to Deep South ELR. That's an example of the community we have. The ELR community is one of the deepest and strongest communities I've ever been a part of. Is an example of how great the communities are in the shooting sports. So I put that hat up there to say, as you get into this, you'll make friends, you'll meet shooters that are going to be nothing but supportive of you. And so you will build that community. You don't have to have it to get started. It's nice to have it to get started, but that community will grow around you pretty quickly. If you show up and you listen and you're humble and you're willing to soak it in, people can tell that you're sincere about the sport and that you're wanting to do what's best. And if they can see that, they are going to help you, I promise. So don't worry about the community at first, because the community is going to form around you. But that's what the hat is for. So let's go through real quick what the basics are. So in summary, you need a good rifle that's going to be capable of at least 1 MOA accuracy or better. You're going to be able to work on that through number 2, your ammunition. Good factory ammo these days is really good. It'll be equipped with good, efficient, long-range bullets that are driven at reasonable velocities to give you good data downrange that are going to have very competitive extreme spreads and very good standard deviations. Third, you're going to want a good bipod. You're going to want something sturdy that supports the front of the rifle. Fourth, you're going to need a really good scope. You're going to need you want to spend more on your scope necessarily than your rifle at times, because it needs repeatable mechanical consistency and really good elevation to give you that chance to reach out the distance. I would almost say glass is almost secondary. All the glass in the price ranges are going to be good for these scopes. The mechanical repeatability is almost more of a bigger concern. You're going to want first focal plane with a reticle with marked subtensions that allow you to hold. Fifth, you're going to want a good solid rear rest, whether that's a bag, a mechanical rest, inflatable bags, something that will let you drive the rifle and control it consistently under recoil. Six, you're going to want good ear protection. If you like eye protection, you can have that as well, but you're going to want something that protects your hearing through a whole day of ELR shooting with hundreds of small explosions going off in your near vicinity. You're going to want to protect your ears. Seventh, you're going to want a ballistic calculator or some way of processing your data that will give you consistent elevations. And then last but not least, you'll want to join this community that's going to be very supportive of you engaging in extreme long-range rifle shooting. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Deep South ELR. Again, what we were discussing was ELR Basics tonight. This was hopefully going to show you what you needed to show up on an ELR firing line and be competitive. If you have any questions or any comments about anything I've gone through tonight, if you need further clarification, feel free to comment below. If you are currently an ELR shooter and you have suggestions for new ELR shooters that may be watching this video, please put them in the comments below. The ELR community is a very strong and supportive community, and we want to make sure that our new shooters feel like they're taken care of and supported. If you're interested in getting more information, you can check us out on Facebook at Deep South ELR. We can also find us at ELR Southeast. There are other series like the East Coast ELR series that you can find on Facebook, as well as matches all over the United States. If you're looking for a one-stop destination to look for ELR information, I strongly recommend ELRalliance.com. That's a new website that's been put out. That's a group of match directors that have come together to help grow the sport of ELR and to provide information that will make it easier for people to gain more information and to participate in extreme long-range rifle shooting. This is a wonderful sport, and we look forward to seeing you on the firing line soon. Thank you.